Welcome back to The Line. Los Alamos National Laboratory is the birthplace of the atomic bomb and one of the top nuclear weapons facilities in the nation, certainly. Now, LANL will soon be run by a new management team. In the coming weeks, the U.S. Department of Energy will award a contract worth more than $22 billion. An article by Rebecca Moss in the Santa Fe New Mexican looked at leading contenders for the job. That would be defense contractor Bechtel, the University of California, and a third team led by the University of Texas system. Now, Bechtel and the University of California had been running the lab as partners since 2006, but their partnership called Los Alamos National Security lost that contract due to serious accidents and worker health and safety violations. Bechtel has partnered with Purdue University for a new bid, and the University of California is partnering with Texas A&M. Jeffrey, Bechtel and the University of California were essentially fired from the job. When you really think about it, do you trust their management will be different with a new management team, or is, this is a big operation we're talking about here.
No.
It's very hard to turn around things when you're talking.
You asked me if I'm going to trust when you have $22 billion at stake,
yeah.
When you've got, let's see here, something like $60 million in possible bonuses. So this is what's really interesting to me. Mm-hmm. You have a model now where you're going to be managing based on science and some bureaucracy, but you're incentivizing that because there are bonuses at stake as well. So when you have people that are bonus to the tune of $60 million, mm-hmm. Are you telling me the human condition is not going to be lusting and be tempted to sacrifice safety in the name of operations?
Are you describing the situation as it stands now or in the future? Because what you're talking about is kind of what's going on now.
But I still understand, if I understand the research I did here, that the incentivization program is still going to continue.
Gotcha.
Bonuses. If that's in play, then I don't know that it's realistic to think that people aren't going to sacrifice, realistically, safety for earning bonuses, and that means production and operations. Again, I'm not judging it. It's just part of what I call just the human condition.
Exactly right. I mentioned Bechtel. They've been at it a long time here, and it seemed almost an automatic that they were getting these contracts over and you know what I mean? It just seemed like this was the deal. It may be somebody else now. How do you feel about that? This is kind of interesting.
I'm not sure that the bidding system for this contract actually is taking, Jeffrey's point is taking safety into account as much as we, as the people who live around it, would like to see happen. I do think it's interesting that the split between Bechtel and UC, if a portion of the assessment was to be safety, they both are going to have the same pluses and minuses. It's very difficult to extricate one from the other in terms of their past history. So, I think that to the extent that government contracting allows for that sort of thing, I don't know that we're necessarily just going to see new faces for the sake of new faces. That's right.
That's right. That's a very good point. Yeah. When you think about it, it's interesting to me how Bechtel, well, they're so large, but they're getting a third bite at the apple here after all these safety violations and everything. Should they even have a chance to bid on this, in your view, or is it? Because only so many people can run a national lab.
That to me, and I sat and thought about this a lot, and I'm going, is it because as I understand it, what happens is they're very good at the technical, the nuclear part. Where they fall down is in the human resource area. And what are they doing, the safety issues? Anything that directly impacts the work staff. So when you do an evaluation, is being able to handle the nuclear development part weighted so heavily that gives them the advantage? Or is it simply there's nobody else out there who can do it?
But we've heard this too big to fail thing about this company for a couple of laps for this lab. Do you know what I mean? Like this has to be these folks because they know what's going on. And
but that sounds to me like they've convinced an awful lot of people who are making the decision that they are the only ones. I can't believe they're the only ones. Because we see differences in universities. Texas A&M was not involved in this bidding war for many, many years. Now they have some nuclear programs. So do they then, are they better at it than the University of California? Or is it that the UC has greater contacts, more, and people are, the people doing the evaluating are humans. They're going to say, well, we know they can do this. Well, we know they kind of got this problem over here, but we know them.
You know, and Gina, if you don't emphasize safety in the nuclear space,
Yeah.
you're talking about pernicious ramifications for thousands of years. It's one thing to be unsafe around here in the studio. Somebody might break a leg.
Right.
But if you expose people to gamma rays or those kinds of materials, you're talking about thousands of years of atmospheric, I guess you'd say, unsafe condition. So I don't use that word safety lightly. It should be a core value for whomever gets the contract. And the last time I read, the criteria does not emphasize safety as part of its process.
That's an interesting point there. Exactly right. You know, Laura, when you think about it again, the idea that, you know, we throw in the word culture a lot. You know, there's a culture inside every organization, but it's true. A lot of folks, you know, it gets established from the top down. And we've got the situation where we have got WIP now, you know, there's problems there with this current management team, you know, we've got all kinds of things. So I ask again, should the folks working in that lab expect to have the same bosses over again after all this? Or is it better for everybody to just turn a page and start fresh here?
Well, I think they're going to have some changes. I don't think
Even the
given
Bechtel
that there
folks
was-
would be, yeah.
Right. Well, given that there was a split between UC and Bechtel, and now they've gone their separate ways, it's going to be a different team than it was before. I do think that they've had a lot of public criticism. They've obviously had some problems with their safety record. So I think they're going to have to do things differently, regardless of who's in that role. You know, what's interesting is, in terms of the question of, isn't there anybody else that could do this? The problem is that this is not a let's go out and seek a different contractor. I mean, that's not the role of LANL or the government to do. It's a bid.
That's right.
And so it's up to whoever
point.
feels that they're competent to be able to do it to put in a bid for this. And there just aren't that many companies willing to do it. There is a lot of risk involved.
Right.
You know, that it's not your typical kind of work, and you need to have experience, know what you're doing. And so I think that there's a very limited number of people, number of companies, and collaborations with universities that can actually handle something. Even our own UNM isn't.
That's right. In the
able
game. That's
to put
right.
anything in.
Yeah.
You just have to have a
point
different
there.
level of experience and personnel and all of that to be able to pull it together. So I think, you know, it is. I think we'll see some difference, but I still think that eventually we'll end up with a team, hopefully, that will move forward in terms of learning from the past, regardless of who it is, and implementing procedures to make things safer going forward.
That's a good point there. You know, we should point out, Sophie, that for LANL, you know, they had great success with some technology on the Mars rover. There's been some work on diseases that has been research that's been fabulous up there.
It's not just nukes.
Thank you.
Nukes
Exactly
is what,
right.
Nukes will get the most attention, but actually what we're hearing is that some of the work that they do in nukes will be farmed out to another location, and
Right.
so I don't necessarily mean that. I don't think that means that they're going to have extra capacity to save the world, but I think it's worth noting as well that LANL exists in an ecosystem that includes other national labs, not just Sandia, but
right.
Across the country.
right.
Sometimes in places I forget they have them.
For better or for worse, that's right. That's right. You know, Jeffrey, PITS, big word right now. That's a big thing, and the news came down that there's going to be Sophie mentioned the word split a second ago, but a split between who handles these things. For some here in New Mexico, that's a big cheer. They don't like us handling any of this stuff at all, but for some others, it's an economic opportunity that's now going to have to be split with somebody else. Where do you come down in this? Is it
I
a
think so.
problem for LANL, or it's okay?
Well, again, it's just a matter of perspective, and I don't think there's any absolute right or wrong answer. But if you have the ability to continue to build PITS, which is the thermonuclear core, I think, if I understand that, it comes with billions of dollars in jobs and funding.
That's right.
So that's economics
Yep.
here in New Mexico. How can anyone argue that? On the other hand, if something is exposed, like 3 Mile Island, 1979, of course, I'm being somewhat dramatic in that metaphorical parallel, but then you're exposing the population to something maybe that hazardous. The point is, it's business, it's economic development. You're talking about another $57 or $60 million or $1 billion at
That's
at
right.
stake.
That's right.
Why not in New Mexico?
And for northern New Mexico, that's,
Absolutely.
you know,
So
no
absolutely.
question about it.
I support it, absolutely, on that basis.
Actually, thank you very much all. That's all the time we have. Jeffrey, great first time.
Thank you.
Did quite well. That's all the time we have. Let us know what you think of this story or any other topic we covered this week by going to NewMexicoInFocus.com and connecting with us on Facebook or Twitter. Thank you all for watching.